The night air was heavy with the smell of rain and gasoline when the first sirens echoed down Pine Hollow Road. Red and blue lights sliced through the darkness, flashing against the wet asphalt. The small town of Millstone, Pennsylvania, was used to quiet evenings, the kind where you could hear dogs bark 3 blocks away. But that night, the calm shattered when a call came in. Possible homicide, 1 victim, juvenile suspect in custody. The victim was Karen Doyle, a 39-year-old mother of 2, found sprawled across her living room floor. The scene was brutal. Overturned furniture, shattered glass, and the faint trace of blood smeared across the hallway. The front door had been forced open, the latch snapped clean off. Her teenage son, Evan Doyle, was missing. Within the hour, police cars swarmed the neighborhood. Reporters began whispering about domestic violence. Neighbors pointed to Evan, quiet, awkward, always seen with his headphones on. By sunrise, his photo was already circulating on social media. Missing. Possible suspect. At 6:43 a.m., just 9 miles from the scene, a patrol car spotted a teenage boy walking along Route 22 barefoot, soaked to the skin. His shirt was torn, and there was blood on his hands. When officers pulled over, he didn't run. He didn't fight. He just whispered, "I didn't mean to hurt her." That was the moment Evan Doyle, 16 years old, became the youngest murder suspect Millstone had ever seen. The interrogation began before noon. Detective Sarah Lennox, known for her sharp instincts and colder patience, led the questioning. The room was small, windowless, the kind that seemed to squeeze confessions out of people. A camera blinked red in the corner as she slid a styrofoam cup of water toward the boy. "Evan," she said softly, "we just need to know what happened last night." Evan's voice trembled. I heard yelling. I ran downstairs, and she was on the floor. I tried to wake her up. There was blood. Then someone grabbed me from behind. Detective Lennox tilted her head. "Someone else was there?" "I think so," Evan said, rubbing his wrists. "He had gloves on. I couldn't see his face." But there were no signs of forced entry besides the broken latch, and no fingerprints except for Evan's. By evening, the department had already made up its mind. There was no intruder, no mystery man, just a frightened teenager and a mother who'd been stabbed 11 times. The interrogation stretched past midnight, over 12 hours of questions, accusations, and silence. Evan's story began to bend under the weight of exhaustion. His words slurred, his answers shifted. Finally, at 2:17 a.m., a detective leaned across the table and said, "Son, we know you did it. Just tell us why." And then, after 16 hours without food or sleep, Evan whispered the words that would ruin his life. "Okay, I did it. I killed her. But I don't remember why." The room went still. Detective Lennox exhaled, picked up her pen, and began to write. The confession spread like wildfire. Teen killer in Millstone. Boy snaps, kills mother. The town that once pitied Evan now despised him. His classmates deleted his photos. Teachers refused interviews. The Doyle family's house was boarded up, and his younger sister was sent to live with relatives out of state. But not everyone believed the story. Tom Keller, an investigative journalist who had once covered wrongful convictions in Pennsylvania, saw something in the footage that didn't sit right. "I've seen real confessions," Keller said later. "That wasn't one. That was survival." He replayed the interrogation tapes over and over. Evan's trembling hands, his vacant stare, his repeated requests for his father that went ignored. Each time, the detectives pushed harder. "You were angry. You wanted her to stop yelling. You just lost control, didn't you?" Keller knew what he was looking at, a coerced confession, but proving that was another story. Meanwhile, behind bars, Evan became silent, almost catatonic. He stopped eating. His attorney, Marcia Grant, a public defender with more heart than funding, filed a motion to review the case, arguing that the confession had been unlawfully obtained. 16 hours of interrogation for a 16-year-old, she told the court. No guardian, no lawyer, no rest. This wasn't a confession. It was compliance. The judge wasn't convinced. The trial was set for January. Then, 2 months before the hearing, a strange twist emerged. A fingerprint report, one that had been filed but never reviewed, surfaced during a system audit. It showed a partial print on the broken door latch. Not Evan's, not Karen's. The print belonged to Kyle Brennan, a 22-year-old drifter with a record of breaking and entering who had lived just 3 blocks away. Brennan had disappeared days after the murder. Detective Lennox's department called it a clerical error. They said Brennan's print was too partial to be relevant. The DA refused to reopen the case. But journalist Tom Keller didn't stop. He began digging into Brennan's background: former foster kid, history of violence, worked odd jobs around Millstone. One of those jobs? Repairing windows at the Doyle residence 6 months before the murder. Keller reached out to Evan's lawyer with the discovery, and the defense team filed for a stay in sentencing. That night, someone broke into Keller's car. His laptop was gone. The external drive containing the fingerprint photos vanished. No prints, no backup, no evidence. The message was clear. Someone didn't want the truth coming out. 2 weeks later, Detective Lennox received a package with no return address. Inside was a single USB drive and a note: "You arrested the wrong boy." The drive contained something chilling: footage from a Bohr's security camera, time-stamped 11:37 p.m. the night of the murder. It showed a man entering the Doyle home through the side door. Not Evan, not a teenager at all. The footage cut out abruptly after 13 seconds. But the shape of the man's jacket, the way he moved, it was enough to make Detective Lennox's blood run cold, because she'd seen that jacket before. It was standard issue for Millstone's own police department. Detective Sarah Lennox sat alone in her car, engine idling in the dim glow of the precinct parking lot. The USB drive lay on the passenger seat beside her, a small piece of plastic that now felt heavier than a gun. She had watched the clip at least 10 times, each time hoping she'd imagined it, but she hadn't. The jacket, the stance, the badge glinting faintly as the figure slipped into the Doyle home, it all matched. It wasn't just a police-issued jacket. It was a Millstone PD tactical coat, worn only by detectives and senior officers, which meant whoever killed Karen Doyle wasn't just inside the system. They were protected by it. Inside the precinct, the night shift was quiet. 2 patrol officers chatted over coffee near the vending machine. Detective Lennox walked past them without a word and entered her office, closing the door behind her. She slid the USB into her computer again, pausing frame by frame. At second 11, the man turned slightly, and a faint scar on his neck caught the light. Her stomach dropped. She knew that scar. Detective Mark Danner, her partner. The same man who'd led the interrogation against Evan Doyle. The same man who'd pushed hardest for a conviction. Mark Danner was a 17-year veteran, decorated twice, and well-liked by the department. But beneath his reputation lay shadows. Years earlier, he had been investigated for evidence tampering, the case quietly dismissed after the complainant vanished. Now, staring at the footage, Lennox couldn't ignore it anymore. Danner had been at the scene that night, hours before they officially discovered Karen Doyle's body, and somehow he'd erased his name from every log entry. Lennox opened the internal case files. The timeline was wrong, the evidence list incomplete. Even the timestamp on the confession video had been edited, 1 minute shorter than the official record. Someone had on Ed House, and yet the boy, Evan, was still sitting in a juvenile detention cell, branded a murderer. The next morning, Lennox requested a meeting with Captain Holt, head of the department. His office was lined with commendations and faded photos of charity events. He looked up as she entered. "Sarah," he said, forcing a smile, "you look like hell. Everything okay?" She slid the USB drive across his desk. "You need to see this." He watched bluntly, jaw tightening with each passing second. When the footage ended, he leaned back in his chair. "Where did you get this?" "It came anonymously," she said. "That's one of our jackets, sir. Danner's jacket." Captain Holt sighed, rubbing his temples. "Sarah, you're treading on dangerous ground. Danner's been here nearly 2 decades. You think I don't know the man?" "I think you know exactly who he is," she said, voice trembling with anger. "And I think you've been covering for him." Holt's eyes hardened. "You need to drop this, right now." The boy confessed. "The case is closed. Don't destroy your career chasing ghosts." When she refused to leave, he leaned forward. "Consider this your only warning." That was when she knew she was right. Lennox walked out of the station that afternoon and called Tom Keller, the journalist. They met at a diner off Route 19, the kind of place where no one asked questions, and everyone pretended not to notice who you were talking to. Keller looked worse than before. His laptop theft had made headlines, and his editor had told him to leave the Millstone case alone. But the moment Lennox showed him the footage, his expression changed. "Jesus Christ," he whispered. "You realize what this means? If that's Danner, the whole investigation's contaminated. They framed that kid." Lennox nodded. "I can't go through internal affairs. Holt will bury it. We need to take this higher." Keller leaned closer. "Then we go public. But first, we need evidence that connects Danner directly to Karen Doyle." They started digging through archived case files, searching for any prior connection. Within hours, Keller found it. A maintenance request filed 6 months before the murder. Karen Doyle had reported a series of threatening messages left on her car windshield. The officer assigned to follow up? Detective Mark Danner. He'd dismissed it as a prank. No suspects identified. Case closed, but Keller wasn't done. He found financial records showing Danner had visited Doyle's home multiple times off duty. Phone records showed late-night calls between them. There were whispers of an affair, one that had ended badly weeks before her death. Suddenly everything fit. The obsession, the rage, the cover-up. Evan hadn't killed his mother. Danner had. And now, anyone who knew the truth was in danger. That night, Lennox drove home under a blanket of fog. Her phone buzzed. An unknown number. She answered. A low voice on the other end said, "You're making a mistake, detective." Then silence. When she looked in her rearview mirror, a black sedan was... The wind howled against the windows of Detective Sarah Lennox's apartment, carrying with it the weight of everything she'd uncovered. On the table lay the photo she'd found in the evidence room, the faint reflection of Captain Holt's face staring back from the television screen behind Karen Doyle's body. It didn't make sense. Holt had been home that night, or so the log said. He'd signed off duty at 9 p.m. sharp, but the timestamp on that photo was 11:38, the same time Karen Doyle was killed. Her hands trembled as she stared at it again, the dim glow of her desk lamp painting the room in blue shadows. She didn't know whether to feel fear or betrayal, maybe both. She'd trusted Holt, her mentor, her anchor during her early years on the force. He was the one who taught her how to read suspects, how to listen between words. Now she realized he had also taught her how to lie convincingly. By dawn, Lennox made her move. She called Keller, her voice calm but urgent. "Meet me at the bridge off Route 17, and bring a recorder. This ends tonight." When Keller arrived, the sun was barely up. Fog hung thick over the water, swallowing the horizon in a bluish-gray haze. He stepped out of his car, camera slung over his shoulder. "You sure about this?" he asked. "No," she said quietly, "but if I don't finish this, no one will." She handed him the photo. He studied it carefully, then his expression hardened. If Holt was there that night, that means Danner wasn't working alone. This whole case was built on a lie, she finished. They agreed on one thing. They needed proof that Holt and Danner had conspired to frame Evan. The only way to get that was to confront them directly. At 9:15 a.m., Sarah Lennox walked into the Millstone Police Department for the first time in a week. Her suspension was still active, but she didn't care. The hallways felt colder than usual, every footstep echoing like a warning. She walked straight to Holt's office. The blinds were drawn, the light muted. Holt sat behind his desk, calm as ever. A steaming cup of coffee beset his hand. "Sarah," he said, almost warmly, "you're not supposed to be here." She placed the photograph on his desk. "Then maybe you can explain this." Holt looked down, expression unreadable. "Where did you get this?" "You were at the Doyle house that night," she said. "You and Danner both. You found her dead, didn't you? And instead of reporting it, you covered it up, because she was going to expose you." He sighed, leaning back. "You've been busy." "I want the truth," she demanded. "Why frame Evan?" Holt stared at her for a long moment before speaking. "Because Danner lost control, he went to see her that night, to beg her not to talk. She was threatening to report their affair. Things got out of hand. I got there 10 minutes too late." "So, you helped him hide it?" "I helped this department survive," Holt said, his tone flat. "You think the world would forgive us if they knew one of our own killed a woman he was sleeping with? The press would have burned the entire unit. So, yes, I made a choice. The boy confessed. We let the story end there." Sarah's voice cracked. "He's 16, Captain. You destroyed his life." Holt's eyes softened, almost regretful. "You think I don't know that? I did what I had to. She shook her head, backing away. No, you did what was easy. At that moment, the door creaked open. Keller stood there, camera rolling, and now the whole world's going to see what you did. Holt's calm vanished. You think anyone will believe this? A suspended detective and a disgraced journalist? You'll be dead in a week. Sarah stepped forward. Then we'll die telling the truth. She turned and walked out, Keller close behind. They didn't see Holt pick up his phone. By evening, the video was ready. Keller uploaded the footage, complete with the confession, the photo, and a detailed timeline of the cover-up. They sent copies to multiple news outlets, national and local. For the first time, they believed they might actually win. But less than an hour later, Keller's upload vanished. His account was locked. The files were gone. Someone inside the system had pulled it down. Then came the call. A distorted voice, calm and measured. You should have stopped, Keller. The line went dead. That night, as Sarah drove home through the quiet streets, she noticed blue and red lights reflecting in her rearview mirror. One patrol car, then another. She pulled over, her heart racing. 2 officers approached, their faces shadowed. Detective Lennox, one said, you're under investigation for evidence tampering and obstruction of justice. They handcuffed her, ignoring her protests. As she was led toward the car, she caught sight of Captain Holt standing across the street, hands in his pockets, watching silently. 3 weeks passed. The video eventually resurfaced, leaked anonymously to an independent journalist out of state. The footage spread fast, first local, then national. The story exploded across social media. Teen framed by police for his mother's murder. Within days, the state attorney reopened the case. Danner was brought in for questioning, but he never made it to court. He was found dead in his home, ruled a suicide, though no note was ever found. Holt resigned quietly, citing health issues. And Evan Doyle, he was released. 18 months after his arrest, the boy who had confessed to a crime he didn't commit walked out of the detention center into the sunlight. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. He didn't say a word. Sarah Lennox stood across the street watching, her badge gone, but her conscience clear. Keller stood beside her, hands in his pockets. You did it, he said softly. She shook her head. No, we just uncovered what they buried. He glanced at Evan, then back at her. What will you do now? She looked him off of the horizon, where the city glowed faintly under the morning sky. Start again, she said. There's always another case, another lie waiting to surface. 3 months later, a small town in Ohio reported a murder with a familiar signature, a staged break-in, a forced confession, and an internal cover-up. An anonymous envelope arrived at Keller's office that same day. Inside was a single photo, a man in a police jacket walking toward a dark house. The caption read, "You thought it ended in Millstone. It didn't.